Imagine a small town in the English countryside where time seems to have stood still. Narrow streets lined with stone houses that have witnessed centuries of history stretch between green hills and ancient forests. The fresh air carries the scent of damp earth, and the morning mist gives the place a touch of mystery, as if it holds deep secrets. This is Todmorden, a picturesque town in West Yorkshire, known for its tranquility and rural charm, but also marked by events that defy human understanding. Todmorden, or Toddy as it is affectionately called by the locals, has a rich history dating back to ancient times when the region was inhabited by Celtic tribes. Its narrow, winding streets tell stories of bygone eras, and the stone buildings, some dating back centuries, are silent witnesses to a life that unfolds at its own pace, almost untouched by modernity. It is as if time itself respects the calm and serenity of this place. However, beneath this facade of tranquility, Todmorden carries a legacy of inexplicable events that have made it one of the main points of interest for scholars of paranormal phenomena and ufology. Throughout the centuries, Todmorden has always been a place shrouded in mystery. Legends of ghostly apparitions, strange natural phenomena, and more recently, a series of unidentified flying object sightings have given the town a mystical aura. For the inhabitants, these stories are part of local folklore, something mentioned in conversations but rarely taken seriously. However, all of this changed dramatically between 1980 and 1982, when over 700 UFO sightings were reported in the town and its surroundings, according to police records. An impressive number that turned this small locality into one of the main focal points of global ufology. The sightings were so frequent that they attracted the attention of investigators from around the world who traveled to Todmorden in the hope of unraveling what was happening in that seemingly peaceful corner of England. Experts in unexplained aerial phenomena, scientists, and even ordinary curious individuals visited the town, attempting to witness what many described as something out of this world. Among all these accounts, one stands out, not only for its strangeness, but also for the credibility of its protagonist. Police Officer Alan Godfrey was not a man given to fantasies. He was a respected police officer known for his integrity and seriousness. With an impeccable career and an untarnished reputation, he was the type of person who would hardly be swayed by UFO stories or alien encounters. However, on November 28, 1980, Alan experienced something that challenged all his convictions and placed him at the center of one of the most fascinating and enigmatic cases in British ufology. On that cold November night, Alan was on his usual patrol through the town. The night was dense, with a light mist hanging over the empty streets, making the lampposts' lights appear diffuse and ghostly. The silence was broken only by the sound of the patrol car's tires on the wet asphalt. The peace of that night, however, would be interrupted by an unexpected call. Some cows had escaped from a fence and wandered onto council land. It was not an uncommon incident in a rural area, but something about that call seemed different, as if a greater force were at play, setting the stage for something far beyond the ordinary. Alan headed toward Burner Road, a quiet street surrounded by tall, shadowy trees. As he drove, he noticed an intense light in the distance, so bright that it cut through the mist like a blade. His first thought was that it might be a double-decker bus, a common sight on British roads. But as he got closer, it became clear that he was facing something he had never seen before. The light, which initially seemed like a distant headlight, revealed itself to be part of a massive and impossibly shaped object. It floated about 5 feet off the ground, emitting no sound whatsoever, in complete silence. Alan parked the patrol car about 30 feet from the object and stood still, trying to process what he was seeing. The object was diamond-shaped, with rounded edges, and measured about 20 feet tall and 40 feet wide. The top part was filled with windows, as if it were a habitable structure, while the bottom part rotated slowly, reflecting light in all directions. The metallic surface seemed to pulse faintly, as if it were alive. Unsure how to react, Alan remained inside the car, observing that manifestation of the impossible. He tried to use the car radio to contact the station, but the device was dead. No sound, no signal. He then grabbed his portable radio, but it was also not working. The feeling of isolation was overwhelming. With nowhere to run or anyone to call for help, Alan decided to record what he saw in the only way he could. He grabbed a clipboard and began sketching the object, trying to capture every detail before it disappeared. But before he could finish, something even stranger happened. An intense flash of lights enveloped the car, blinding him momentarily. When the light dissipated, Alan realized he was driving again, about 300 feet ahead of where he had stopped. He did not remember starting the car or even moving from the spot. The object had vanished, as if it had never existed, but the impact of that encounter would be etched in his memory forever. Still dazed, Alan stopped the car and looked back, trying to understand what had happened. The road was empty, except for one disturbing detail. In the spot where the object had floated, there was a perfect circle of dry ground, contrasting with the wet asphalt from the night's drizzle. The circle appeared to have been swept clean, leaving only the edges marked by leaves and branches. It was as if a mysterious force had cleaned the center of that circle, leaving it untouched by time or the elements. Unsure what to think, Alan returned to the station. His heart was still racing, and the image of that strange and powerful object would not leave his mind. He was greeted by his colleague and friend, Officer Malcolm Agley, to whom he recounted the entire story. Alan showed the sketch he had made of the object, but the most disturbing thing was his state. Agitated, nervous, with palpable fear in his eyes. Malcolm, though skeptical, knew something very serious had happened. Knowing Alan as he did, he was sure Alan was not the type of person to make up such a fantastic story. As he tried to process the events of that night, Alan noticed something even more unsettling. There was a time gap of about 30 to 35 minutes that he could not explain. The journey that normally took only 15 minutes had consumed almost an hour. It was as if time had been distorted, or worse, as if part of his memory had been erased. Additionally, An intense itch on his left foot led him to discover something inexplicable. The sole of his boot was deeply cut, as if a sharp blade had made a straight cut from one side to the other. The depth of the cut reached the inside of the shoe, and when he removed his sock, Alan found a circular red mark on the area that had been itching, as if something had touched or injured his foot with precision. The next day, Alan returned to the station for his usual shift, but the atmosphere felt different. His colleagues whispered among themselves, and he could feel their curious and suspicious glances. The story of his encounter with the unexplainable had already spread, and he was called in for a conversation with a senior officer who wanted to know more details about what had happened. The biggest surprise came when Alan discovered he was not the only one to witness something unusual that night. On the same night, about 12 miles away in the town of Halifax, 3 police officers, John Porter, Howard Penn, and Judy Baxter, also had a disturbing experience. They were patrolling the streets near Swampy Fax, an area known for being a dumping ground for stolen motorcycles. As they walked through the area, John felt a strange sensation, as if something compelled him to look back. When he did, he saw an intense, pulsating light that seemed to float in the air, moving at an unimaginable speed from side to side without making any sound. The light moved so fast that the 3 officers were paralyzed, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. They tried to use their radios to report the sighting, but just like Alan's, the radios were dead. The light, after a few minutes, disappeared at high speed, leaving them in a state of bewilderment and fear. Later, as they discussed the incident, they realized the direction in which the light had vanished pointed directly toward Todmorden. The account of the Halifax officers, though separated by miles, seemed to connect directly with Alan's experience. The civil and military air traffic departments investigated the possibility of flights in that area on the night in question, but nothing was recorded. No civilian or military aircraft had flown over Todmorden or Halifax that night, which only deepened the mystery. In search of answers and increasingly obsessed with understanding what had happened, Alan decided to undergo hypnotic regression a few months later. The sessions were conducted by ufology experts and recorded for later analysis. During the 4 sessions, Alan revealed surprising details about what had happened during the time gap he could not explain. Under hypnosis, Alan described how, after sketching the object, he got out of the car and was struck by a beam of light so bright it temporarily blinded him. When he regained his senses, he found himself in a room that looked like a medical examination center, with metallic walls and a bluish glow illuminating everything around him. He knew somehow that he was inside the object he had seen on the road. In the room, Alan was approached by a being that, surprisingly, looked very human. He described the creature as tall, about 6 feet, with hair and a beard, wearing a white tunic reminiscent of ancient civilizations. The being introduced itself telepathically as Iosef, a name later translated to Joseph or Jose by some sources. Alan felt a strange sense of peace in Iosef's presence, as if he were a guardian or protector. In addition to Iosef, Alan described the presence of small creatures, which he believed to be robotic. There were 4 of them, all seeming like programmed assistants designed to perform specific tasks. These creatures approached Alan, performing what he could only describe as medical examinations. It was during this time that one of the robots cut the sole of his boot, causing the injury he later discovered on his foot. The experience was extremely stressful for Alan, who, though he felt no pain, was overwhelmed by fear of the unknown. At the height of his panic, Iosif ordered the tests to stop. Another flash of light occurred, and in the blink of an eye, Alan was back in his car, driving down the road. The revelations under hypnosis were shocking, but they also brought a strange sense of relief, as for the first time, he was able to fill in some of the gaps in his memory. The information revealed by Alan during the regression was included in the official report, and the case caught the attention of ufology experts worldwide. Among them was the renowned Dr. John Mack, a pioneer in the study of abductions, who considered Alan's account one of the most compelling and well-documented ever recorded. Mack believed Alan's experience was real and that he had in fact been abducted by a non-human intelligence. Alan Godfrey's case became so notorious that it served as the basis for a book written by Jenny Randles. Published in 1983, the story was investigated, re-examined, and discussed by countless researchers. And to this day, it remains one of the most respected accounts in the ufology community. For many, Alan Godfrey's case is a landmark in British ufology, something that continues to generate discussions and debates, especially regarding the possibility of extraterrestrial life and its interactions with humans. What makes Alan's story even more intriguing is its connection to another unsolved mystery. 4 months before his encounter with the unknown, Alan was assigned to investigate the disappearance of Zygmunt Adamski, a Polish immigrant living in England. Adamski disappeared on July 6, 1980, after leaving home to go to the market. He was found 3 days later, on July 9th, on top of a coal pile 17 miles from his home. Adamski's body bore strange marks on the back of his neck, along with an unknown gel that was never identified by experts. There were no signs of a struggle, and no logical explanation was found for how he ended up on top of the coal pile. His death certificate listed cardiac arrest, but the circumstances of his death remain a mystery. Some suggest Adamski may have been the victim of an alien abduction, a theory that gained traction when linked to Alan Godfrey's case. Zygmunt Adamski's story is a perfect example of how the unexplainable often intertwines with seemingly unrelated events, creating a web of mystery that challenges even the most skeptical investigators. Adamski's disappearance and death remain unsolved, and the fact that Alan Godfrey was the officer assigned to investigate the case only adds another layer of intrigue to the already complex story of Todmorden. Could the events involving Alan and Adamski be connected in some way? Could there be an intelligence behind these incidents that operates beyond our understanding? Today, Alan Godfrey is a retired police officer who, despite the years that have passed, has never changed his version of the events of that night. He has given numerous interviews over the decades, always reaffirming the truth of his experience. Alan admits that revealing what happened had a significant impact on his life, both positive and negative, but he has never regretted telling his story. For him, sharing his experience was a way to bring to light a mystery that many would prefer to ignore, but which, for him, is an inescapable truth. The town of Todmorden, with its ancient buildings and rich history, remains a place of tranquility. But for those who know Alan Godfrey's story, it is also a reminder that sometimes the extraordinary can happen in the most unexpected places. Alan Godfrey's case is not just a story of an encounter with the unknown. It is proof that there are forces and intelligences beyond our understanding that from time to time manifest in our world, leaving us with more questions than answers.